Whether facing public scandals or navigating multiple marriages or dealing with the rejection of my scientific ideas, I realized that endurance, ability to adapt to change, that was necessary. I was misunderstood, But I say, the biggest people with the biggest minds can be shot down by the smallest people with the smallest minds. And you know what? Think big anyway. It will all work out, and maybe they'll even see their mistakes one day.
Welcome to AudioLife, the podcast where we tell your story in your words. I'm your host today, Carrie Purcell, and today we're going to listen to a conversation I wish I could have had. Yes, you heard me right. At AudioLife, we typically capture these really important moments and real stories in our guests' real voices and in their own words. But sometimes we don't have a chance to ask all of the questions we wish we could have. We were too young, or we weren't even born yet, or we didn't have the awareness of what we would want to know later in our lives. Today, we're going to have an interview with someone who passed in the year 2000, which was during my lifetime, but I never had the chance to meet her. She lived a long life until she was 85. She's famous for being a Hollywood film star in the 1930s and 40s, and she was known as the most beautiful woman in Hollywood. But during World War II, she also did something which I consider to be much more interesting and incredibly important, without which most of you would not be listening to me today. Hedy Lamarr and a partner patented frequency-hopping spread-spectrum technology in order to help protect the American troops using radio messaging, which was easy to intercept at the time. Now, this in and of itself is incredible, but it was this technology which was later used to develop Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and GPS, which so much of our life today is built on. And because of modern technology, and because so much of her story and her life has been documented in film, in news stories, and books, we're able to have a conversation of sorts with Hedy today, something I've always wanted to do. So I'll actually be speaking with Hedy GPT Lamarr, and we're going to learn so many things about her life and achievements. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Hedy. Welcome to the show. Now, this is a conversation I've always wanted to have with you. You discovered and built the basis of our Wi-Fi and Bluetooth technology, and I have so many questions for you.
Why, thank you, honey. It's my pleasure to be here with you posthumously.
Well, Hedy, we always like to start at the very beginning. So I want to ask, where were you born, and is there a story behind your name?
Yes, I was born in Vienna, Austria, on November 9th, 1914. And my original name was Hedwig Eva Maria Kiesler. My father, whom I adored, was Emil Kiesler. He was a bank director and a passionate man who loved the intricacies of technology and mechanics. He would often take me on long walks, and he would discuss and explain the inner workings of different machines and gadgets. And I think I got my curiosity for science and invention from that experience. My mother, Gertrude, was a fine pianist, and she came from a well-to-do Budapest family. She converted from Judaism to Catholicism, and she influenced my early artistic interests. Now, my name Hedwig is German, and it means warrior in battle. But once I got to Hollywood, they renamed me, and I became Hedy Lamarr. They thought the name would soften my image and help my acting career, and it probably did.
Wow, what a great introduction. I've always heard of people changing their name for their acting careers, but there's so much history behind your name.
Well, thank you for your kind words. Indeed, names often do carry deeper stories and meanings. And in Hollywood, a name can be like a new persona, a part of a person you need to be on screen. But no matter the name, I always remembered where I came from, and Vienna is always in my heart.
Oh, that's lovely. You must have missed Vienna then.
Oh, the Vienna I knew. I saw in my dreams.
Oh, how lovely. Wow. So, okay, if you were going to share just one story with the world, which would it be and why?
Well, if I were to share one story, it would be about the invention during World War II of frequency hopping spread spectrum technology. I was an inventor, you know. And for this one, I collaborated with George Antheil, the great composer, and we developed the secret communication system. Our goal was to help combat the Nazis by creating a method that could prevent the enemy from jamming and intercepting torpedo signals. This technology laid the foundational ideas for modern wireless communications, including Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Why is this important? Well, you'll learn that people only wanted to see me one way due to my Hollywood image. But I was an inventor and very curious, and no one wanted to see my intellect. But you know, beauty and brains can indeed coexist. And my contributions reached beyond the silver screen. My invention continues to resonate today. So for me, it's a story of passion and innovation and breaking stereotypes, something I've always done and something I deeply care about.
How incredible. I've read about this, and it astounded me that a seemingly common civilian, an actress actually, had the mind and the ability to create such an important technology during the war, and one that laid the basis for the way we operate today.
Yes, honey. It's a part of my life that surprises many. My interest in science and technology was nurtured, as I said, from a young age by my father. He encouraged my curiosity about how things worked. And this background, combined with the challenges I observed during the war, motivated me to continue and to contribute in a meaningful way beyond my film career. The concept George Antheil and I developed was initially overlooked and not implemented by the Navy, but it was gratifying to see its principles eventually recognized and utilized in various forms of communication technology. It's a reminder that innovation can come from the most unexpected places, and that one's contributions to society aren't limited by a person's profession. You know, my belief is that one should pursue their diverse interests, and that there's always potential to make a significant impact.
Yes, that resonates with me very much. And is it true that you patented the technology?
Yes, it's true. Correct. George Antheil and I did receive a patent for our invention, which was officially called the Secret Communication System. We were granted U.S. patent number 2292387 on August 11, 1942. Our system was designed to use frequency hopping, spread spectrum technology to make radio-guided torpedoes harder for enemies to detect or jam. And in fact, the brilliant George used player piano scripts to program the signals and the receivers.
Wow.
I know. Unfortunately, at the time, the technology was not adopted by the military. It was considered too avant-garde and difficult to implement. It wasn't until much later that the value of our invention was recognized and utilized in modern wireless communications technologies.
I'm so intrigued by this. So as an entrepreneur myself, I believe that we should only be inventing or innovating for things that have a need, or in the words of Derek Sievers, answering calls for help. So the idea is that we need to be solving real problems today, but I'm fascinated by the challenge of staying just ahead of the market and then achieving product market fit, or that delay from the early adopters to the early majority. It sounds like you invented something that was just ahead of its time and for a market that was too conservative to risk being an early adopter. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. That is a fair assessment. Our invention was, indeed, ahead of its time. Conceptualized during an era when the technology necessary to fully implement it was not yet mature. The military's hesitancy to adopt such a novel system during World War II is understandable. They needed technologies that could be immediately and reliably deployed. However, the essence of true innovation sometimes lies in envisioning the future and developing solutions for tomorrow's problems today. even when the immediate application isn't clear or the market isn't ready. It was only much later, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that an updated version of the technology was considered for military use. And in our case, the technology eventually found its place and was crucial in modern communications. Timing, technology readiness, they are critical components of product market fit, as you say. The gap, between invention and practical application can be significant. And history's shown that pioneering ideas that initially struggle eventually find a foothold and become foundational once the world catches up.
Yes, absolutely. So at this point in your story, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, that is, were you consulted or compensated in any way?
No, I was neither consulted nor compensated when the technology eventually began to be used. The patent for the frequency hopping spread spectrum technology expired. Well, that's another story. But anyway, it was used in military, and as you know, later in civilian technologies. George and I did not receive real recognition or financial benefits from the later applications of our invention during our lifetimes. Although I did get a very nice letter and an award in 1997. So it was at that time that I was recognized for my contribution. In 1997, the Electronic Frontier Foundation awarded me a Pioneer Award for my work in developing spread spectrum technology. And my son Anthony accepted it for me. And the recognition was gratifying. But mostly, I am pleased that my invention served a very important purpose for the military and for communication today.
Yeah, it's really incredible. But were you really okay with them taking your work and not recognizing you at the time and compensating you?
Well, I would say it would have been gratifying to see our invention recognized and utilized in our lifetime, and certainly to have been compensated for it. But I understand the nature of innovation, especially being so far ahead of its time. The true value of our contribution lies in its lasting impact, not just in immediate recognition or financial reward. And of course, at the time, I didn't care much about financial reward. I was never paying much attention to money, and I always had enough. I pursued my interests in science and technology out of genuine curiosity and a desire to contribute to something larger than myself, particularly during a time of great global turmoil. War, changes everything, and you have to do everything you can to help.
Well, you absolutely did. And I can see how the drive to contribute and the satisfaction that it was eventually recognized and utilized in such an important way can pay more than financial compensation ever could. Now, let's talk a little more about your career and the relationships in your life.
Of course, I'd love to dive into that. My acting career began quite early. I had a passion for the arts, and my mother nurtured that. And I was discovered as a teenager, and that led to my first major role in the movie Ecstasy. It was controversial, but it also put me on the map in the European film industry. And then when I moved to Hollywood, I signed with MGM. It was a new chapter, a new language, and they called me the most beautiful woman in film. I was always considered very beautiful from the time I was a teenager. And they designed Snow White to look like me. And I starred in films with actors like Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy. As for my relationships, they were rather complex. And I married 6 times, and each marriage taught me something different about love and companionship and myself, but none of my marriages lasted. They did contribute to my growth as a person, though. My children were my anchor through much of my life. They provided me with purpose and joy beyond the screen and the glamour.
Wow. So 6 marriages. Tell us about your first marriage.
That was to Friedrich Mandel. I was very young, just 19, when we married in 1933 Friedrich was quite a prominent figure, a very wealthy Austrian arms manufacturer. And he was incredibly charming and persuasive. But the marriage became rather stifling over time, and Friedrich was very controlling, and he tried to keep me away from acting, which was a passion of mine. And he even had my films bought up and destroyed because he didn't want me portrayed on the screen in the light that films often shed on actresses. And maybe he had a point. But anyway, I longed for the freedom and the opportunity to pursue my own interests and career. And also, the political climate was changing, and we were Jewish. And even though Friedrich was so connected, I felt worried. So, at such a young age, I made my decision to leave him, and I fled. I went to Paris, and then soon I made my way to Hollywood.
So it was around that time that you met the head of MGM, Louis B. Mayer.
Yes, that's right. I met Louis B. Mayer while I was in Paris, and he was there scouting for talent. And Europe, is full of artists, and actors looking to escape the unrest. And I seized the opportunity to start anew. I negotiated a contract with him. Mayer was initially hesitant. He offered me a rather modest salary, but I knew my worth and my potential in Hollywood. So on the ship to America, I charmed and impressed him and all the other passengers too. They were taken with my beauty, And by the time we reached New York, he'd offered me a much better contract. That was my entry into Hollywood. And it was when I became Hedy Lamarr, the actress.
Wow, what an incredible story. And knowing your value and proving it to get the contract you deserved, that's rather impressive. Now tell me, because at this time you were still Jewish, right?
Well, yes. Being Jewish played a significant role in shaping who I was. Now, growing up in a Jewish family, Austria during the Nazi rise to power, it had profound impacts. And by the time I married Friedrich, who was also Jewish, but he had connections with Italian fascists and German Nazis, I was deeply aware of the growing dangers around us. And my experiences with Mandel, witnessing arms dealings and the conversations of war, only heightened my resolve to escape and make a meaningful contributions against the Axis powers during World War II. Later in life, in Hollywood, my Jewish identity was something I had to navigate carefully due to the sentiments and biases of the time. And while I didn't publicly discuss my Jewish heritage, it did remain an integral part of my identity, and it did influence my worldview and actions, including my efforts during the war and my support for Jewish causes. But as the years went by and I became more open about discussing my heritage, especially as awareness and education about the Holocaust and anti-Semitism grew, my background as a Jewish woman from Austria who fled the horrors of the Nazi regime, made a new life in America, and contributed to technology and film? Wow, this is really a story of resilience, and it's been my life's journey.
Wow. I really can't imagine what you've experienced and the incredibly difficult decisions you've had to make. It sounds like the Hedy Lamarr who got to Hollywood was a new name for a new life.
Yes, it was.
Now, can we return back to the story of your husbands and your children? So who was the father of your children?
That was John Loder. He was my fourth husband. We married in 1943, and it was during the height of my Hollywood career. John was also an actor. He was from Britain, and we met while working on films together. And he was very supportive, and we shared a connection. Of course, we had two children together, Anthony and Denise. Unfortunately, as it sometimes happens, our lives started to take different directions, and we ended up divorcing in 1947. Those years, however, were filled with both personal joys and the challenges of balancing a bustling film career.
I can see that. So your fourth husband, would you say that you and John really loved each other?
I believe there was a genuine love between John and me. We connected on many levels, not just as actors, but as individuals, and navigating the complexities of life in Hollywood. And we shared important moments together, including, of course, the birth of our children. That deepened our bond. However, the pressures of our careers and the inevitable challenges that come with such public lives, that took their toll on our marriage. Love is quite challenging to maintain amidst such demands, you know.
And now for a word from our sponsors. Ready to share your stories and life philosophy, or capture those of a parent or grandparent? Or maybe a corporate package is right for you to build connection across your workforce and add value to your clients. Visit audiolife.io today to learn more. Our listeners will get 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. AudioLife, where memories find their voice.
It must have been difficult, but as you've said, raising your children was an anchor for you. So tell us what it was like raising children.
Oh, raising children. That was a profound joy and a significant challenge for me, especially, balancing my career with motherhood. Well, I had 3 children, and each of them brought a unique light into my life. And being a mother, that changed my perspective on what was truly important. It wasn't the glamour or the fame, but those quiet moments of connection and nurturing. However, it wasn't always easy, and my career demanded long hours and travel. And that meant I sometimes had to rely on nannies and caregivers, and it was a source of guilt for me. But it must be for many working mothers, especially when they are no longer married. However, I did strive to ensure that my children knew that they were loved, and they were my priority, despite demands on my career. And one of the most important things I tried to give to my children was the value of education and the curiosity about the world. I wanted them to see that life offers so many paths, and that they should pursue what truly makes them happy, regardless of what society expects. My hope was to raise them to be independent thinkers, kind-hearted, resilient. I would say motherhood was definitely the most important role I played. No film, no invention could ever compare to that. And the pride I feel in seeing my children grow into thoughtful, capable individuals. A journey filled with ups and downs, but every moment was worth it.
Oh, that's really lovely. So you played many roles in your life, and knowing that of mother was most important, even if perhaps you didn't realize it at the time, is very insightful. But for clarity, you and John had 2 kids, and you've just mentioned now that you have 3. Who's the third?
Yes, that's correct. My oldest son, James, was adopted. And unfortunately, it didn't work out as we had hoped. We had to send him to military boarding school when he was only 11 because he had some behavioral issues. And that was a difficult period in our lives. And after he went to boarding school, well, he found new parents. He became attached to this new family, and he asked if he could stay with them. I was just heartbroken, but I had to let him go, and after that, we didn't talk. We didn't talk at all after that. Such decisions and their outcomes were among the hardest aspects of my life, deeply affecting me. People thought I could just walk away from a husband or a son and not feel anything. But they forget that I'm an actress. Of course, I still feel, but sometimes the show must go on. And maintaining personal relationships, managing a demanding career in Hollywood, and the choices I made often came with heavy emotions. I wished for a different outcome. It was a source of such sadness that our relationship didn't flourish as I had hoped. Family dynamics, especially under scrutiny and pressure in public life, can be incredibly challenging, And it's a reminder of the delicate balance between personal and professional life, decisions can have long-lasting impacts on relationships.
Of course. And family relationships can be complex. And certainly when you add that, a high-profile career and other aspirations, plus potentially the competing priorities of different husbands and the children's fathers, it seems impossible, really, to avoid some very difficult decisions and strain on your relationships. So let's shift a little bit and tell us more about your career and maybe how it changed over the decades.
Okay, yes. My acting career. Well, it started in the 1930s after I was discovered by Louis B. Mayer, and I moved to Hollywood. Initially, I was cast for my looks. I was always called glamorous, and often they made me the seductive female lead. I was lucky, I suppose. My early roles in films like Algiers and Lady of the Tropics, they helped establish my image as the most beautiful woman in film. But as the 1940s progressed, I sought more meaningful roles that could showcase my acting abilities, beyond my beauty. And I produced my own films. I starred in some of my most memorable films, Boomtown, Come Live With Me, and the critically acclaimed H.M. Pullum Esquire. But one day I heard about a role that I knew I had to play. It was 1949, and the movie was Samson and Delilah, and it was directed by Cecil B. DeMille. And I met him, and I told him, I am Delilah. And it was one of the highest points of my career. And we earned significant box office success, However, by the 1950s, everything was changing, and people were getting televisions. And there weren't as many roles for me. So I produced my own film in Europe. But I couldn't bring it back to America. They were not used to independent films, and no one wanted to give a shot for a beautiful actress unless she was going to be a beautiful actress. But this time was hard. There were several struggles too. I had issues with marriages and increasing pressures from the public to maintain my image. And I would say, what is my image? And they told me it was glamorous. But they also said things that weren't nice as well. So I retired from film and chose to focus on my personal life and interests. I was still an inventor. And I married again and spent time in Aspen.
So tell us about this marriage. Who was it and what number was it?
This was Howard Lee in 1953, and he was my fifth husband. And he lived in Texas, and he was an oil man. And so we all moved there with the kids.
So it was with Howard that you went to Aspen for the first time, wasn't it?
Yes, Aspen. Howard and I first visited Aspen, Colorado together, and it was quite beautiful and refreshing, and we enjoyed it immensely. Aspen offered a retreat from the bustling life in Hollywood and the spotlight, and we were increasingly weary from all of that attention. But the serene landscape and the opportunity to be somewhat incognito provided a lovely respite for both of us. So Howard and I cherished our time there, and it was a place that held a special meaning for us. And when I got there, I thought of skiing in my childhood in Europe. And I thought how many people would want that experience here. So I got an idea.
Oh, this was Villa Lamarr, right?
Exactly. This was indeed a special project. I was inspired by the luxurious ski resorts I knew from Europe, particularly the Viennese style. And I envisioned creating a similar retreat in Aspen. The concept was to bring a touch of European elegance. And sophistication to the rustic charm of Aspen. Aspen had just gotten ski lifts, and so there were only the first few hotels there, and it wasn't very popular. But I knew it was special. Well, Villa Lamarr was certainly among the more unique and popular Aspen resorts, and I made $1 million a day there. I was very proud of the villa, the beautiful villa that we built. People thought it was a little piece of Vienna, too.
Oh, it sounds just incredible. And what a creative project to be at the beginning of building what became such a major tourist attraction in Aspen, Colorado. So tell us about your later years. After the marriages, what was life like then?
Well, in my later years, I didn't go out much. I wanted my privacy by then. And the public life that was so much a part of my existence, it wasn't always great. And I was getting older, and I found Hollywood less appealing, more superficial. I was less connected to the new generation of stars. And
Sure.
there were legal troubles as well. It was all a misunderstanding. But the publicity was very unwelcome, and that soured my taste for public attention. It was so disheartening to see my achievements overshadowed by sensationalist headlines.
Mm.
I also grew more interested, though, in my personal hobbies and my intellectual pursuits, including my work in science and invention, which provided a fulfilling and private satisfaction that fame no longer offered. So,
Oh, great.
yes, retreating from public life, it felt peaceful to me. It allowed me time to reflect, to read, engage with the world in a way that felt more meaningful and personal. It was also accompanied by a sense of isolation at times and missing the camaraderie and excitement of my earlier years. But it was a period of introspection and, in some ways, a rediscovery of who I was beyond the silver screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seemed like the public wanted you to stay young forever. Isn't that true? What did you do to try to uphold this image that the American public had of you?
Yes, indeed, it was a significant expectation from the public and from Hollywood for me to maintain the image of eternal youth and beauty that they had crafted around me. Hollywood, yes, especially at that time, it placed such huge value on appearance, particularly for women, and they were often valued for their looks, far more than their talents or their contributions. I engaged in various beauty treatments and practices, some of which were quite common in Hollywood. I tried to stay abreast of the latest cosmetic procedures and skincare routines, though I never went to the extremes that some might go to today in plastic surgery. But I finally grew to question this relentless pursuit of youth. Was it ever enough? I started to pull away from the public eye because I wanted to be appreciated for more than just my looks. I wanted recognition for my intellect, my inventions, my depth as a person.
And eventually you were recognized for your intellect and the frequency hopping invention.
Yes, of course. Although it took quite some time. I did eventually get recognition for my contributions to frequency hopping technology. I got the Pioneer Award from Electronic Frontier Foundation. Oh, if only George could have been there. He's passed away,
So, looking back, is there anything you would have done differently?
Well, reflecting on my life and career, there are naturally moments where I wonder about the roads not taken and decisions that I could have made differently. If there's anything I might have changed, I think I would have made a point to advocate more strongly for myself in the film industry. Maybe, seeking more roles beyond the glamorous appearances. Hollywood wouldn't allow it at the time. But when I produced my own films, I think that's where I would have liked to see more acceptance and acknowledgement. I wish I had pushed harder for opportunities that showcased my acting talents, as well as my intellectual interests. I did try to push more than others, but still. And then there's my personal life. The balance, between a demanding career and personal life was always a challenge. And looking back, I might have tried to find more harmony between these two. However, I also recognize that each choice and every experience contributed to who I was. not just an actress, but an inventor, a mother, a person. And the difficulties I faced taught me resilience and gave me a broader perspective on life. My experiences, good and bad, taught me so much. I developed empathy also towards others.
Mm-hmm.
So while there are things I might have wished to approach differently, I'm also grateful for the journey and where it has led me. And each experience, is a valuable lesson contributing to my growth and the legacy I hope to leave behind.
Yes. I can understand that sense that everything that's happened has developed who you are and what you've become. So while some of it wasn't what you might have chosen, you also wouldn't change it. It was all learning and life experiences, and you talk a lot about life lessons and the value of education.
Yes, I do. Life experiences offer a rich and often unstructured form of education, that formal settings can sometimes fail to provide. They teach us resilience, adaptability, practical application of knowledge in ways textbooks and classrooms might not always capture. And my own experiences from, navigating the complexities of Hollywood to inventing a new technology have been invaluable in teaching me about the world and about myself. These lessons, giving me a broader perspective on the challenges and opportunities life presents, go far beyond what traditional education could have offered.
Right. That makes sense. So what life lessons would you say that you learned the hard way?
Well, throughout my life, I learned several important lessons, and often the hard way. One of the most significant, of course, is the importance of understanding and respecting one's own worth. In the early days of my career, I had to accept roles that didn't fully challenge me or utilize my capabilities because of how others perceived me. Learning to advocate for myself, to seek roles and opportunities that reflected my true talents and interests was a crucial step in both my personal and professional growth. Another lesson I learned, and this was very important, it was about the impermanence of fame and the value of privacy. The allure, of Hollywood and the adoration of fans can be intoxicating, but also fleeting. I learned the importance of maintaining a private life, cultivating relationships, passions outside of the public eye. You need a more stable and fulfilling foundation for your life. And I learned resilience. I had to in order to keep going. Whether facing public scandals or navigating multiple marriages or dealing with the rejection of my scientific ideas, I realized that endurance, ability to adapt to change, that was necessary. I was misunderstood, But I say, the biggest people with the biggest minds can be shot down by the smallest people with the smallest minds. And you know what? Think big anyway. It will all work out, and maybe they'll even see their mistakes one day.
Oh, that's incredible. I love your perspective. Keep thinking big and change the world, even if it takes the world a while to catch up to you. Hedy, what would you like your legacy to be and why?
Wow. Well, in reflecting on my life, I think the most important is my dual legacy in both the arts and sciences. In the arts, of course, I am proud of having crafted a successful career in Hollywood during its golden age, contributing memorable performances that have stood the test of time. My role in films like Samson and Delilah and Algiers, they allowed me to touch the hearts and minds of audiences around the world. Equally, I am profoundly proud of my contributions to technology. My goodness, the invention of frequency hopping spread spectrum technology with George Antheil, though initially overlooked, has become a foundational component in modern wireless communication technologies, those such as Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. This part of my legacy demonstrates that innovation can come from anyone, regardless of their primary field. And people should not be overlooked because of their beauty. And, of course, I am also deeply proud of my role as a mother. Raising my children and watching them grow into individuals with their own paths and passions. That's been one of my most rewarding aspects of my life. So together, these achievements, they encapsulate a life lived with passion, creativity, resilience, pushing boundaries, challenging stereotypes, and leaving a diverse legacy that spans beyond the silver screen to impactful technological advances.
Yes. Well, I think that's just a beautiful way to end our conversation today. I agree. You should be very proud of your high achievements across the arts and the sciences. It takes an exceptional person to be able to perform at such a level and also at such a range. And despite all of this, sometimes when you go home, you're just mom or a wife, and sometimes that accomplishment is the most monumental in life.
Thank you so much for your kind words and for this wonderful conversation. It's been such a pleasure to reflect on these aspects of my life, even the ones that were hard. I'm glad to share these thoughts and stories with you. Indeed, the role of a mother is the most grounding and profound. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss both my personal and professional life. It's a reminder, too, that, beneath the accomplishments and the accolades, the simple, everyday moments of connection and love hold deep significance. Thank you again for this engaging discussion. I've enjoyed every moment of our chat.
Oh, Hedy, I can't thank you enough for the conversation we've had here today. It was insightful and really a dream to be able to have this conversation and learn so much from you today. This has been the AudioLife podcast with special guest today, Hedy Lamarr. Hedy's voice was played by a voice actress. The script was simulated using ChatGPT 4 on May 1st, 2024, recounting real names, dates, and events from her life as they have been documented throughout the written form and in film, though the script has been slightly modified from the GPT version. If you enjoyed what you heard today, sometimes the impossible can become possible. And sometimes we aren't truly recognized until we're gone. And the show today is a tribute to the incredible mind, mother, inventor, actor, and woman, Hedy Lamarr, or Hedvig Eva Maria Kiesler. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a 5-star rating. This helps other people find us and ensures you never miss an episode. You can also check out our videos on YouTube at AudioLife Memoirs or learn more about our private podcasting service at audiolife.io. Thanks for listening and see you next time.
If you like what you heard today, consider recording your own AudioLife private podcast or giving one to a loved one for a unique and memorable gift. Today, AudioLife listeners will receive 10% off using discount code GIFT10 and order number AudioLife Podcast. Also, remember to rate our show and subscribe so you'll never miss an episode.